Tensions boil over at a panel discussion when Pam Bondi faces off with a sharp-tongued liberal journalist. What starts as a typical debate quickly turns into an unforgettable showdown. But just when you think it's over, Pam drops a truth bomb that leaves everyone speechless. This speech goes viral and changes everything. Don't miss how she completely flips the narrative. Watch till the end to see the moment that went viral. Chapter 1. The tension in the air. The auditorium at the University of Tampa was packed. Students, faculty, and even some locals filled every seat, all of them buzzing with anticipation. The topic of the day? Media and public service in America. But no one was here for a casual chat. This was about to get real. On stage, two figures stood. Pam Bondi, former Florida Attorney General, calm as a hurricane's eye, and Cameron Holt, the sharp-tongued, liberal journalist who could tear down anyone with just a few words. The contrast was so obvious, it almost felt staged. But this wasn't reality TV, this was real life, and the stakes were high. The panel started smoothly enough. The moderator, a professor with a steady voice, asked the first question about the role of media in shaping public opinion. Bondi, who had dealt with the media her entire career, gave a professional response, talking about the need for balance and fairness. Holt, on the other hand, leaned into the mic with a smirk. She didn't care much for balance, she cared about digging in, cutting through the noise, and hitting hard. I guess you'd say the media is just a tool for you, huh, Pam? Holt shot her a sideways glance, her tone dripping with sarcasm. I mean, what's the point of real journalism when it's all just about playing nice with power? The room shifted. You could feel the tension building, thickening the air like humidity before a storm. Some students whispered to each other, while others sat forward, eager to see what would happen next. This was about to get spicy. Bondi didn't flinch. She sat there, stone-faced, not even giving Holt the satisfaction of a reaction. Instead, she calmly adjusted her microphone, keeping her cool. It's not about playing nice, Cameron, she replied, her voice smooth but firm. It's about engaging in a real conversation, not just throwing punches to get likes. The audience seemed to hold its breath. Holt's smirk faltered for a second, but she quickly regained her footing. Oh, sure. But how do you feel when those punches are aimed at you? She fired back, her eyes narrowing as if daring Bondi to crack. For a second, Bondi just looked at her. The kind of look you give someone when they've just crossed a line. You know, Cameron, you're right, she said, almost too calmly. It's tough. Criticism comes with the job. But here's the thing, there's a difference between challenging someone's views and tearing them down just for sport. The crowd was hooked. This wasn't some back and forth where you could predict the outcome. This was real. Raw. The tension in the room had shifted from curiosity to something more intense, almost like a challenge. Cameron had just thrown a jab, but Pam was throwing punches back with something even more powerful, grace under pressure. But Holt wasn't done yet. So, what? You're the saint in this scenario? She sneered, her eyes gleaming with the thrill of the fight. Come on, Pam. We all know the game you're playing. You've been part of the system forever. The audience held their breath, and Pam's response was like a gut punch to Holt's ego. Cameron, I've spent my career fighting for people who had no voice, she said, her voice rising just enough to match the energy in the room. You think this is about me? It's about what's right. And I'll keep fighting for that, no matter who's in my corner. The room was dead silent for a moment. Bondi had just flipped the script, turning what was supposed to be a political slap fight into something more. This wasn't just about left or right. This was about respect, and the audience felt it. You could practically hear the gears turning in everyone's minds. Could Pam Bondi really be this different? Was she more than just a politician? And just like that, the battle lines were drawn. What started as a predictable debate was now shaping up to be an unpredictable war of words. The only question left? Who would come out on top? Don't go anywhere. This was just the beginning. Chapter 2. The gloves come off. The air in the auditorium was thick with tension. You could practically cut it with a knife. Pam Bondi and Cameron Holt were at a standoff, and the crowd was eating it up. But what no one saw coming was the shift that was about to take place. This wasn't just a debate. It was turning into a full-blown verbal battle. And Pam wasn't backing down. Holt, sensing that Pam wasn't going to crack under her pressure, leaned in with a smirk, clearly looking for blood. You know, Pam, it's cute when people like you try to act like they've got everything under control, she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. But in the real world, we don't get to play pretend. Your whole career's been about controlling the narrative. Maybe it's time you face the truth. The audience stirred. Some gasped, while others shifted uncomfortably. It was clear Holt was gunning for a knockout punch. But Pam wasn't rattled. If anything, she seemed to grow even more poised. You could see her mind working, calculating her next move like a chess master. With a coolness that sent chills through the room, Pam leaned forward, locking eyes with Holt. "I've spent my life fighting for the people who don't have a voice," she said, her tone unflinching. "I'm not here to control the narrative. I'm here to make sure people who are getting trampled by this system actually get heard." The crowd was silent. You could feel the weight of her words settle over everyone. Holt looked taken aback, but she wasn't about to let Pam off that easy. "Oh, really?" Holt snapped, clearly trying to regain her footing. "Because last I checked, the people who are really suffering don't get to sit in comfy offices and collect big paychecks, right?" Pam's eyes didn't leave hers. "You don't get it, do you, Cameron?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper but packing a punch. "It's not about comfort or paychecks. It's about doing what's right, even when the system is set up to keep people down. I'm not perfect, but I've never backed away from that fight." For a moment, the room was frozen. Everyone could sense that something had shifted. Holt, the one who had been so quick with her jabs, now looked like she was running out of ammunition. Pam had done something she hadn't expected. She'd made it personal, and she had hit a nerve. And then, just as the tension seemed to hit its peak, a student in the front row raised their hand. The room went still, as if the entire audience collectively held its breath. What could this student possibly ask that would add to this already charged atmosphere? The moderator, sensing the shift, gestured to the student, and everyone leaned in, waiting for what was coming next. This was far from over, and the best was yet to come. Stick with us. This battle is about to take a wild turn. Chapter 3. The student's question that changed everything. The room was electric, and you could feel the pressure mounting like a ticking time bomb. After Pam's calm but powerful response to Cameron's barbs, everyone was on edge, waiting for the next move. The audience, who'd been captivated by the back and forth, shifted their focus to the student who had raised their hand. What could they possibly ask that would add fuel to this already blazing fire? The student, a young guy with shaggy hair and a notepad in hand, stood up, clearly nervous but determined. He glanced around the room before locking eyes with Pam. "Ms. Bondi, how do you handle all the criticism?" he asked, his voice steady but with a hint of curiosity. It wasn't just a question, it was the question. Everyone in the room could feel it. This wasn't some softball inquiry, this was a challenge. The crowd leaned in, anticipating the answer. This could be the turning point, the moment where the entire discussion shifted from a political sparring match to something more personal, more real. Pam didn't hesitate. She took a slow breath, and in that moment, it was clear she wasn't just going to answer the question. She was going to lay down the law. "It's tough, no doubt," she started, her voice quiet, but cutting through the noise like a hot knife through butter. "You think you're prepared for the hate, the attacks, the constant pressure. But there are days when it gets to you. When the noise gets so loud you can't hear your own thoughts." The crowd was hanging on her every word. No one expected this kind of honesty from a seasoned politician. But Pam wasn't just a politician anymore, she was a person. And she was showing it. "But here's the thing," she continued, her voice steady, a slight edge to it. "I've been in the trenches. I've fought for victims, for people who had no voice. And I'll tell you something, when you stand up for what's right, when you're fighting for people who can't fight for themselves, you learn how to ignore the noise. You learn how to rise above it." A murmur ran through the crowd. It was like a switch had been flipped. The room, which had been filled with tension and sharp words just moments ago, was now silent, as everyone absorbed what Pam had just said. There was power in her words. Power that wasn't based on rhetoric or political game-playing. It was real, raw, and unfiltered. Pam leaned in a little, her eyes intense as she spoke, almost as if she was speaking directly to the student. "You see, Cameron thinks this is about me, about politics. But it's not. It's about standing up for people who can't defend themselves. And if that means taking criticism, taking the heat, so be it. Because when you do what's right, the noise is nothing." The student nodded, a look of realization dawning on his face. The crowd was stunned, and even Holt, who had been the one throwing the punches just moments earlier, seemed taken aback by the rawness of Pam's response. For a moment, you could feel the room shift. It wasn't just about political debate anymore. This was bigger. This was about integrity. This was about fighting for something beyond personal gain. And Pam had just reminded everyone of that. But Holt wasn't going to let Pam have the last word. The silence didn't last long before she shot back, her tone colder than ever. "Well, Pam, that's a nice story. But let's see if your actions match those words." The audience tensed again. The tension was back, and it was thicker than ever. The gloves were off, and there was no going back. But just wait. This was only the beginning. The real battle is about to kick off. Chapter 4. Bondi Strikes Back. The mic drop moment. The tension in the room was almost unbearable. Cameron Holt had just thrown down the gauntlet, daring Pam Bondi to prove that her words were more than just talk. But little did Holt know, Pam wasn't just playing defense. She was about to deliver the knockout punch everyone had been waiting for. The crowd could feel it. Pam was standing tall, calm as ever, but the energy in the room was shifting. It was clear this wasn't a typical political debate anymore. It was personal now. Pam wasn't just defending herself, she was defending everything she stood for. And she wasn't about to let Holt get away with trying to spin the conversation into something it wasn't. So, Cameron, Pam began, her voice even but cutting, you want to see if my actions match my words? Well, let me tell you something. I've spent my career standing up for people who didn't have a voice. People who were told they didn't matter. And you know what? I'll take the criticism all day long if it means I'm doing the right thing. The room went dead silent. Holt's expression faltered just for a moment, and it didn't go unnoticed by anyone. Pam had struck a chord. Pam wasn't done, though. She leaned forward, eyes locking with Holt's. You think the system works for everyone, don't you? But it doesn't. Not for the families living in poverty, not for the victims of crime. You think it's all about political games, about winning. But it's not. It's about the people who get forgotten, the ones who don't have the luxury of playing the system. Holt's smirk began to slip as Pam's words hit harder than any jab she'd thrown. The crowd, which had been on edge for the entire debate, was now hanging on Pam's every word. This wasn't just another political speech. This was real. And Pam was showing them that she wasn't just a talking head. She was someone who had fought in the trenches, faced down the toughest battles, and had the scars to prove it. I've been in the courtroom, Pam continued, her voice rising slightly with intensity. I've defended victims who had nothing left. I've fought for people who couldn't fight for themselves. And that's what matters. That's what I'm here for. I'm not here to play games. I'm here to make sure the voiceless get heard. The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Holt, who had been the one throwing the punches just moments ago, looked caught off guard. The control she once had was slipping, and everyone in the room could feel it. Pam wasn't finished. She shot a glance at the audience, letting the weight of her words settle before dropping the mic, figuratively, of course. You want to know if my actions match my words? Look at my record. Look at the people I've helped. I'm not just talking. I've been doing this for decades, long before you even knew what it meant to fight for something that mattered. Holt, now visibly rattled, opened her mouth to respond, but the words seemed stuck in her throat. She wasn't prepared for this kind of response. Pam Bondi wasn't just playing politics. She was playing for something much bigger. And the crowd? They were on her side now. Pam sat back, her demeanor unshaken. Holt, her confidence now cracked, seemed unsure of what to do next. The fight that had started as a political debate had just turned into a battle of principles, and it was clear who had the upper hand. The room was still. The energy was palpable. Everyone knew they had just witnessed a turning point. This wasn't just about a debate anymore. This was about the fight for something deeper. But hang tight, because things are about to get even crazier. Chapter 5. The Truth Bomb That Left Everyone Speechless. The atmosphere in the room had completely shifted. What started as a political sparring match had turned into something far more intense. Pam Bondi had just thrown down a powerful challenge, and Cameron Holt, once the confident and sharp-tongued journalist, was visibly rattled. The audience, who had been caught in the crossfire of this fiery exchange, now hung on every word Pam said. She wasn't just defending herself anymore. She was delivering a message that was about to change the entire conversation. A hush fell over the room as Pam took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the audience. She wasn't just addressing Holt anymore. She was addressing everyone in that auditorium. You know, the thing that gets me about these debates, she began, her voice low and steady, is that they always turn into personal attacks. You saw it tonight, didn't you? It's easier to tear someone down than actually talk about the issues that matter. The crowd nodded, their eyes fixed on her. It was clear that Pam wasn't just speaking to Holt. She was speaking to everyone who had ever used negativity as a tool for distraction. This isn't about me. This isn't about any one person. This is about the system that keeps people down. This is about how we all let the noise drown out the real conversations we need to have. Holt, visibly stunned by Pam's calm and measured response, opened her mouth to fire back, but Pam was already several steps ahead. Let's talk about respect for a second, Pam continued. her voice now carrying the weight of someone who had seen it all. Disagreement is fine. I welcome it. But when you start attacking the person, you're not making a point. You're just creating division. And that's the problem we have in this country. We don't know how to disagree without turning it into a fight. The crowd was silent now, hanging on every word. This wasn't a typical political debate. This was a wake-up call. Pam was speaking from the heart, and it was clear that her words were striking a nerve with the audience. Even Holt, who had been so quick to attack, seemed to realize that Pam had just dropped a truth bomb that was impossible to ignore. Pam leaned in, her gaze unwavering as she addressed the room. It's easy to throw punches. It's easy to be loud and flashy. But if we want real change, if we want progress, we've got to do better. We have to learn to listen. We have to learn to engage without tearing each other apart. The room was dead silent. Pam's words hung in the air like a challenge to everyone in that room and beyond. Holt, now completely taken off guard, seemed to lose her edge. She was no longer the fiery journalist tearing down her opponent. She was just a person standing there, trying to process the weight of what Pam had just said. I don't care if you agree with me, Pam finished, her tone unwavering, but at least show some respect. That's the only way we're ever going to make a real difference. For a moment, no one spoke. The audience was stunned. It wasn't just the message that hit hard, it was the delivery. Pam wasn't just playing politics. She was playing for something much bigger, something deeper. The crowd, who had been divided just moments before, now seemed unified. It was clear that Pam had won the room, not with flashy rhetoric or insults, but with a message of respect and empathy that was impossible to ignore. Stay tuned. This isn't over. The next move is about to change everything. Chapter 6. The moment that went viral. The air in the auditorium was thick with a kind of tension that felt like it could snap at any second. Pam Bondi had just delivered the speech of a lifetime. It wasn't just political rhetoric. It wasn't a jab at her opponent. It was something deeper, something real. She had stood her ground, and in that moment, the entire room had shifted. The audience, once caught up in the back and forth of political games, was now listening to something more profound. But what Pam didn't know was that her words were about to do something even bigger than just shake the room. They were going to shake the world outside of it. As the moderator wrapped up the panel, people pulled out their phones, their fingers moving faster than ever before. Someone in the audience had already caught a clip of Pam's epic response, and within minutes, it was all over social media. By the time Pam stepped off the stage, the video of her speech had already started to go viral. The once divisive debate had now turned into a moment of unity, and everyone seemed to be talking about it. The comments started flooding in, from both sides of the political spectrum. But here's the twist. No matter where people stood politically, they couldn't deny one thing: Pam had earned their respect. On Twitter, hashtags like #RespectMatters and #PamBondiTruthBomb started trending. People were sharing the clip over and over again, some with fiery praise, others with harsh critiques. But the one thing no one could ignore was the power of Pam's message. It wasn't about politics anymore. It was about humanity. Meanwhile, back in the auditorium, the atmosphere had shifted from tension to reflection. People were talking, but now they were talking about something bigger than the usual political noise. The students, faculty, and locals who had been in the room could all sense it. Pam's words had left a lasting impact, and it was clear that it wasn't just about her. It was about the conversation they needed to have as a society. Pam, unaware of the storm that was brewing online, was making her way out of the building when her phone buzzed. She glanced down at it and saw the dozens of notifications flooding in. She opened her Twitter feed and was greeted with a flood of comments, some positive, some negative, but all of them driven by the same thing: her words. She had just gone viral. But for Pam, it wasn't about the fame. It wasn't about the attention. It was about the fact that her message had connected. People were starting to talk about respect, about how they could disagree without tearing each other apart. For the first time in what felt like ages, the noise seemed to die down. The internet was full of heated opinions, but it was also full of people starting to rethink how they engage with one another. As Pam scrolled through the comments, one stood out above the rest. I don't agree with Pam on everything, but I respect the hell out of her for speaking up like that. Pam smiled to herself, knowing that no matter where the conversation went from here, she had started something that couldn't be undone. The ripple effect had begun, and it wasn't just a one-time debate. It was the beginning of a movement. This is just the beginning. The real impact of Pam's words is yet to come. Stay tuned. Chapter 7. From Debate to Movement. The impact of Pam's words hit harder than anyone expected. What started as a heated political debate at the University of Tampa had turned into something much bigger, a full-blown cultural moment. As her speech continued to spread like wildfire across social media, people from all corners of the country began to take notice. And the more they watched, the more they couldn't stop talking about it. The comments poured in from every direction. Some were skeptical, questioning her political stances, but others, many others, found themselves nodding along, feeling like someone had finally spoken the truth they had been yearning to hear. The debate had gone viral, but not just because of the back-and-forth jabs. No, this was something deeper. This was about respect, about the way we engage with one another in a divided world. Pam's phone buzzed constantly. She barely had time to finish one message before another arrived. Her inbox was flooded with requests for interviews, from local stations to national outlets. But it wasn't the media attention that got to her, it was the personal messages. People, both supporters and critics, were reaching out to her, telling her how her words had made them rethink their approach to conversations. Even those who disagreed with her politically were admitting, in private messages, that she had made a point they couldn't ignore. She had done the one thing most politicians couldn't: she'd made people listen. But the real turning point came when a viral video clip of her speech was shared on one of the biggest political platforms in the country. A well-known journalist posted it with the caption, "We need more of this in politics." The tweet exploded, garnering thousands of retweets and likes. People from all walks of life, Democrats, Republicans, and independents alike, started to share their own stories of how they had become disillusioned by the constant bickering and division. Pam didn't expect this kind of reaction. In fact, she had gone into the debate just trying to make her point clear. She didn't think she would be remembered for a viral moment. But that's exactly what happened. And now, she had an even bigger responsibility: to keep the conversation going. The buzz didn't just stay online. A few days after the debate, Pam was invited to speak at several events, some political, some non-political. She was asked to be on panels, to give keynote speeches, to even hold roundtable discussions with people who had been directly impacted by the issues she spoke about. It was as if her message had sparked something that couldn't be put out. People wanted to be part of the movement. People wanted to talk about how to disagree without disrespecting each other. At one of her first public appearances post-debate, Pam stood before a crowd of students at a local high school. The moderator asked her what it felt like to have her words go viral. Pam paused before speaking, her expression thoughtful. "It's humbling," she said, her voice carrying across the room. "But more than anything, it's a reminder that we're all just human. We're all trying to figure out how to make sense of this crazy world. And if we can have conversations that don't tear each other apart, we might actually get somewhere." The crowd broke into applause, and Pam felt a shift in the energy. This wasn't just about her. It was about the possibility of change. A change in how people communicated, how they treated each other, even when they disagreed. Pam knew she wasn't done. This wasn't a one-time thing. The message was out there now, and she was ready to keep pushing it forward. Get ready. This is only the beginning of something way bigger than any debate. Chapter 8. The Ripple Effect. A movement is born. The buzz around Pam Bondi's viral speech wasn't just about her anymore. It was about a shift in the way people were engaging with each other, a movement that was starting to gain real traction. What had begun as an intense debate in a university auditorium had transformed into a national conversation. It was clear that Pam had ignited something far bigger than herself. The question now was, where would this new conversation go? The media had picked up on it fast. Television networks, podcasts, and online forums couldn't stop talking about the moment. Pam became a symbol of something people had been craving, a way to disagree without losing respect for each other. People from all sides of the political spectrum were sharing the video, quoting Pam's words, and even using them as a rallying cry for a more civil discourse. For the first time in a long while, the divisiveness seemed to subside, even if just for a moment. Pam herself was in overdrive. Invitations were flooding in from all over the country. She spoke at rallies, town halls, and even on late-night shows. She was everywhere. Her message had become a touchstone for everyone, from students to politicians, from activists to everyday citizens. No longer was she just a former attorney general. She had become the voice of a movement that wasn't about politics, but about humanity. But the most profound change came in the people around her. A new generation, one that had grown up with social media wars and polarized debates, was starting to listen. Students, young professionals, and even people her age began to reach out to her. They shared stories about how they had started to rethink their approach to conversations, to disagreements, and even to online discussions. At one of her town hall meetings in a small Midwestern town, Pam stood at the front of a packed room. A young man, his face half hidden behind a bushy beard, stood up. He was shaking, clearly nervous, but his voice rang with conviction. "Pam, I didn't agree with you on a lot of stuff before, but after hearing what you said, I realized I was wrong. Not about the issues, but about how I've been treating people who think differently. I've been fighting for the wrong reasons." Pam nodded, her expression softening. "It's not about being right," she said, her voice carrying over the room. "It's about respecting each other enough to have those hard conversations. The issues will never get resolved if we just shout past one another." The room fell silent. That's when it hit her. This wasn't just about her words anymore. This was about something bigger than politics, something bigger than any individual. It was about how we as a society could find common ground in a world that was constantly pulling us apart. The crowd was no longer divided. They were leaning in, wanting to be a part of this change. Pam's phone buzzed constantly, but now it wasn't just about interviews and news outlets. People were thanking her for showing them that it was possible to stand strong without tearing others down. It was clear that Pam wasn't just sparking a political movement. She was igniting a cultural shift. As the event wound down, Pam stood there for a moment, looking out at the crowd. She realized something. This wasn't just about one speech, one debate. It was about what came next. The movement she had started wasn't finished. It was growing, and it was something that could change the way people interacted, both online and in person. This was just the beginning. The ripples Pam had caused were spreading, and there was no telling just how far they would go. This is the turning point. The world is about to change one conversation at a time. The moment that changed everything, respect over politics. What started as a political showdown turned into a movement. Pam Bondi's words didn't just go viral. They sparked a nationwide conversation about respect, integrity, and the way we engage with each other. In a world that's drowning in division, one speech reminded us that we can disagree without tearing each other apart. But here's the twist. This is just the beginning. The ripple effect is real, and it's growing. Want more? Don't miss what comes next. Hit that subscribe button, like this video, and ring the bell to stay in the loop, because the best is yet to come.